everyone. Welcome back to the Run podcast with Brandon Thomas, and our guest today is John Gilmore. Hey, Coach, how you doing today? Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into coaching.
Well, I'm Coach John. I've been in track my entire life. I'm a sprinter, I guess, and then I started running track at 14 in high school, and ran track in college, and then tried to run professionally, but faster I got, the faster everybody else got, so I really wasn't very fast. So one day when I was teaching, a teacher who was a track coach from Alaska, I was teaching up in Glendale, asked if I would come across the street and help out at Hoover High School. I was teaching at Toll Middle School. I was like, yeah, sure. Yeah. And I think it was like 2005, 2006. Mm-hmm. And so I kind of just started there and then coached there for a couple of years, a year or two, and then started doing some private stuff and off and on. And then I opened up a facility called AOS. In 2011 was my former training partner, was a Herbert coach at Rancho Cucamonga, so we had like the only indoor track in California. And so from there, started coaching a lot of high schoolers that will come through, and then closed that place, and I'm going outside, and now I'm here. I don't know, it's just kind of like, it kind of fell in my lap, you know, it's not something I actually sought. I was supposed to go to law school. I was going to do both. But AOS took 12 hours a day, law school would be 12 hours a day. Had a family. What's going to happen?
Got to sleep sometime, yeah. Right. Why did you, have you always coached like on the younger side for athletes?
I first started at high school. Okay. And then I started youth. 2 kids came through 8th grade, and I didn't even want to coach kids. I didn't want to coach track at all. But the parents talked me into it, so I started working with these 2 girls, and they were in 8th grade, 7th grade, going into 8th grade. They became 2 of the fastest in the country. And then when they became fast, the parents just started telling them what we do. And then I ended up going with to some high schools and coaching them. And I like training kids. Yeah. You know, but I mean, I train from youth to high school to collegiate to professional. I love the whole gambit. But my passion is these kids because I'm immature. Yeah. So I'm like a big kid.
Hey, talk about those 2. So
which one?
Kayla and Kyla.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if I could mention names.
Yeah, let's get deep into Kayla and Kyla.
Okay, so what happened was, father came through and asked if I would coach him. I said, okay, we'll work on it. But when I was running track, I remember myself and my training partners, we would watch youth clubs come in. I knew nothing about the youth scene. This is when we were trying to run, when we were running track. And we'd get to practice, and those little kids would be running. And then we'd leave, and those little kids would be running and crying when they're running. And you hear the coach, you gotta want it. You gotta go. And these little kids, so I go to a parent, I'm like, why are you doing this with your kid? It's child abuse. Oh, they gotta work. And I was like, but they're children. Yeah. So they gotta work. And I was like, okay, if I ever did something like this, I would not do that. Go, fast forward 7, 8 years later, these 2 girls come in, going, like I said, 7th grade, going into 8th grade. And I told the parents about that and what I'd seen. I was like, what I'm going to do is I'm going to teach them how to run 10 meters. Then I'm going to teach them how to run 20 meters. Then I'm going to teach them how to run 30 meters. And then we're going to go 60. And then we'll go 80. And then we'll go 100. And that's how we're going to do it. And so with that, Kyla went from 13 and change in 100, I think 13, to 12 flat in 8th grade. And 24 flat. And her twin sister, went from a slower 13, maybe a high 12 to 12.3 and 24.3. So they became, the next year, Kyla in high school was the fastest freshman in the state. Kayla, fastest freshman in the state, 11.7, 23.7. And as that progressed, people started coming because what I tried to do was teach biomechanics, proper sprinting. We go fast. Yeah. I don't believe in going around the track and distancing your way to speed. Yeah. So if you teach them how to run right, things fly right, That's kind of...
So those 2 kids, just so that you know, Kayla and Kyla, I got to know them over the past couple of years. They were ridiculous monsters in the youth track game and in high school. John, I don't say that, but those 2 girls were ridiculously
They're good. And they're family to me. Still extremely close. They're, make me feel old. I was in my 30s, now I'm in my 50s. And so they're 20... 26, okay. And it's just amazing to see, that build these types of relationships. But they were 2 of the fastest. But then at that same year, in their 9th grade year, man, out of the top 8, 10 sprinters in California on the girls' side, I had like 8 of them. So it was her, the twins, Brittany Brown, Amanda Van Buren, Jeanette Paul. All of these girls were running like 11s. in 23 years.
Brittany Brown.
Brittany Brown.
You just brought up a name.
Okay, but she was part of that
You brought up
group.
a name.
Okay, let's
I-
go.
So let's talk. I was going to set it up for the end, but let's talk about Brittany Brown.
Oh, so,
Yeah, you know.
All right, so the story with her was that the founder of AOS kept talking about his daughter went to Claremont High School, and that's where Brittany went. And so he kept talking about this girl, Brittany, who was like really fast and all that stuff. And so her senior year, he's like, oh, you got to work with her, you got to work with her, bring her over. And okay, fine. So I meet her in December of her senior year, so going into the second semester. So December over break.
Okay.
I met her, and I was unimpressed. But no, not at all. She was overweight. Sorry, Brittany, it's the truth. And she couldn't handle the first workout.
Okay.
And so, but I mean, she was cool. She's bright and funny. I mean, she's like hilarious and of that sparkly personality. If you're a track fan and watch, she was that way back then. One day we're at the facility and we're doing box jumps, and you have the 42-inch box. Mm-hmm. She's clumsy. And so we're doing box jumps, and the highest box, she jumps so high, she almost misses and jumps over. And I was like, oh my God, wait a minute.
Wait
if you can jump, you can swim.
yeah.
I was like, where did that come from? And then the next thing you know, we're doing starts, and she's like smashing, sorry, Kyla, but she was. My daughter, she was like smashing everybody. Her first race, she runs like 12-1, 20, she hadn't PR'd in the 200 since her freshman year in high school at 25 and change, which is quick.
Yeah.
So in her first race, I think her senior year, she ran like 12-1. Okay, 2 weeks later, she ran like 11-7. And by the end of the season, I think she ran like 11-3, 11-4. She was the second fastest in the state. And 23 and change, she strained her quad. So she didn't perform as well in the 200. But she became one of the fastest in the country. Then went on to USA Junior Olympics and won that. And then went on to Iowa. She became the fastest 200-meter sprinter under, she's just a good people. To attract really good people, and she's developed over the years.
Right.
And kind of my philosophy, I never turn anybody away. Mm-hmm. So I don't care if you're slow or fast. If you're slow, I'm going to try and help you get from being like hella slow to slow. And then maybe from like slow to maybe, a little something.
Yeah.
But all the athletes I work with have been developmental. Mm-hmm. So that's one of the reasons I don't, that generally they've come to me slow. Mm-hmm. And then through time and patience and perseverance and just figuring out how to try to move correctly for them, develop some of the fastest athletes in the country, year after year in the state, But that's not where my ego lies. It's about, for me, one of my philosophies, we were talking about that, these kids go through a lot of school at home. So I'm trying to create a safe space out there, and so I think track practice, it's going to be some work, it's going to be some fun, but it should be a place where they can flourish and feel happy and safe and where they're loved and cared for, because you never know. So when they come in, I ask them, how are you doing? And if they say, okay, I'm like, what, not fantastic. But I mean it. It's not like, how you doing? I keep it moving. Each and every one, if I forget, you've seen me do it. If I forget to speak to somebody, even the grown folks, I'm asking, how you doing? How's your day going? How your legs feel? Because it helps me coach to know, in a sense, them on and off the track. So that, I can have 5 athletes that run the same events and we'll do 5 different workouts because of just how it is, how their mentality is and what their bodies can take.
Brown was an Olympic bronze medalist in the 2024 Olympics.
And a silver medalist in the 2019 World Championships in the 200.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And she took let's say year before last, she took second in 100 at U.S. Nationals, making the World Championship team. Took 7th in the finals.
Certified master, so certified.
Yeah.
Brittany Brown certified.
Just good people. You know what I mean? I'm just,
So Brittany Brown is one of the top girls you train, top athletes you train. Talk about some of the other top athletes you've trained.
Olympians. I used to train Shay Anderson, trained her in high school. She was one of the best in the country, hard worker. She ran 51.9. In fact, the year she ran at the Mount Sac relays and ran the fastest 400 from collegiate to everybody. She won the whole thing.
While she was in high school?
When she was in high school.
She was in high school.
Wow.
51.99. And then she made the Olympic team, not this past, but the one before.
Okay.
Just making the finals in the 400-meter Olympic trials, they took her as in the relay pool. And then I worked with Isaiah Jewett, who was an 800-meter runner. But I met him back when he was in 8th grade. And when he was like a sprinter. And so it was when I had a facility. And so I'd known him through high school. He went to Cathedral, didn't need me, great coach, got him through, and then he went to UC Irvine. It really wasn't working out for him there. So then,
Talk about it.
Okay,
Talk
so,
about it.
so So, all right. So he would sneak out, because I lived in Irvine. So he would sneak out and come do some work with me.
Okay.
So working on some of the speed development and all that kind of stuff. Make a long story short, he ended up leaving and going to USC his last year or two and just blew up. I mean, he ended up winning NCs, ran 143 and change. 2 weeks later, he makes the Olympic team. He goes there, you see the commercial. He's the one that falls in the 800 meter first or second round, something like that. He falls. The following year, he called Matt Spike and helped him with some speed development. So started working with him. He come on a day or two, really like a day a week. And he ended up dropping from his PR in the 400 was 45.9. He only ran the 400 once outside. He ran 45.9 to 45.2. And I think he could have gone 44. Okay. He didn't make the team that the next year. He didn't make the Olympic team this year, but I didn't work with him this year. You know, but those are like 3, I guess, Olympians.
Well, 3 really big names.
Yeah.
Okay. It's 4.
Yeah. 3 really
I mean, you know, but 3 are not just right now. I mean, they are.
Yeah, but what does it mean to you to just see these kids that you've helped train and grow and develop?
It's fantastic.
And see that
you know, but once again, it's not really like one of my favorite stories is not somebody who ended up becoming like really, really fast. The kid was slow. Okay. Slow as molasses. And a couple of years ago, I don't want to put him on, but he is senior in high school. He ran like 13 in the 100, and he was trying. Our last track meet, cold, windy, nasty day, and he drops 12.5. And when he ran up, I was on the board track, I finished results, and he runs up, he's like, "Coach John, I ran 12.5, and I'm not gonna lie, but a tear just came in my eye, and I was really happy because he went from being like really slow to just being slow, but it was a huge improvement. Yeah. And those kind of things are like really important to me. I mean, a lot of accolades, people, I've gotten these many champions. I don't know how many CI champions I have, but I have a lot. I got a lot of state finals. One year, between me and Rich Holmes and Daryl, we had 20 athletes at state, and they all made finals. We had them on almost every event except like the shot put and the high jump. We had them in the long jump, 3,200, the mile, 100, 200, all the events, hurdles, and won all that. And if we were a team, we'd have destroyed everyone. Yeah. But because we were just us, my daughters go to CIF, and I don't think about that. It's just like I got a bunch of All-Americans for USATF and AAU, stuff like that. Somebody just broke one of the records with Kayla and Kyle, broke our 4x1 record this year, this past season in Texas. And I was like, oh, okay, well, that's a record loss. It was went on for 10 years. I don't know. But I don't count those things. I have fun. And if you do well, that's just a byproduct of that. Now, don't get me wrong. Yeah. I do like athletes to perform well. And it feels good when they're like real deal Holyfields. But it's not about that. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I would like for them to be able to get scholarships and stuff, and some money. But they come to you to get faster. And that's the goal, And some, come to get faster, and they get faster, but they don't get, like, fast. In a relative sense of what really fast is here in California. Right. But they make improvement. And it's a positive place for them to be. And that's where, even with the grown-ups, because they've been through, those post-collegiates and working on becoming a professional. They've been through a lot with some of these coaches, and I'm very picky about those people I work with. Generally, they're athletes that I trained when they were in high school and college, because I've had some crazy sprinters. 100-meter sprinters are wins. One bad race, you got problems, and so I cannot coddle adults. I will coddle the heck out of a child. But I'm preparing them even when you go to college, you're not going to get this. And some of them can't make the adjustment, and some of them are going to go to college and quit. Because they just, and maybe that may be some of my fault, but I try to prepare them. Yeah. You are going to be a commodity, especially if you go to a big, sexy school. If you go to a school that's not big and sexy, you may get a certain amount of attention, but if you don't perform.
Everyone runs like you.
Yeah. Currently, we both coach at the same schools. Yes. All right. So I coach at Servite and Rosary. You're the sprint coach at Rosary.
Yes.
I'm the sprint coach at Servite. But before all of that happened, tell the story about how we met. And how we got you here.
Oh, man. I was working with pre-Black Lightning. Black Lightning is a youth track club. Okay.
Not just a youth track.
Well, it's one of the fastest youth clubs in the country. Okay. These little girls from high school times. I mean, they have destroyed dreams.
So youth, what age is that? What ages are those?
Youth goes from like 0, they're like little zygotes out there, to 18. But some shit, they're little fetuses out there. But they're fast. So before that track team formed, we were up at, I want to say Fullerton College, right?
Correct.
That's what okay.
Correct.
And I was working with Coach Demetrius.
Correct.
Daughters and kids, and some of the kids like Nevada and all them kids who go to some of the top high school. I guess, I don't know, but they were like you. They were still you.
Mm-hmm.
This was pre-COVID.
It was pre-COVID.
It was pre-COVID.
Yeah.
And then so I guess Coach Demetrius, because I didn't know you. I think I'd seen you, but I didn't.
I've seen you, but we didn't know each other.
Never
We never talked.
And I guess, okay, I'm not going to speak for him. I guess he kind of liked what I was doing with the athletes, I guess.
Okay.
And so he's like, yeah, I'm trying to, maybe start this thing up at some of these, at some of the Survey. Did you know that? I didn't remember the name then. I didn't even know what Survey was. And he's like to come. I'm like, yeah, sure. But, I hear that all the time, which is nothing against the coaches. But, I hear, okay.
Yeah.
And I was cool if it works out, fine.
Right.
And then COVID hit, and then COVID ended. And then I think
You got a call.
I got a call. And it was like, hey, I'm serious. Would you like to come through? I guess you can tell the story better.
He just spoke very highly of you. And then we've seen each other a couple of times. And then when I met John, I met him at college where he was training at. I came to one of his training sessions. I was like, look, I may get the head coaching job at a high school. I'm already a head coach for another school and a sprint coach. Rosary, I'm the head coach of as well, and the sprint coach. But I can't focus on two programs at once. Like, I can't coach the sprinters at Servite and Rosary and give them the same level of attention. And so I told John, I was like, dude, I need your help. So if I get this job, you're the first person I'm calling.
Okay.
And so I called. And so that program went together. We went from probably the worst high school program in the state of California
Really?
to a possible state contender to win a state championship now.
Oh, yeah.
Over the last 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
So we have an amazing program, but together we've done some really, really, really good work.
And hats off to I've never, not dissing any other coaches, but rarely do you come to a place full of sprint coaches who work together and there's no jealousy. Every sprint coach thinks they are the best sprint coach, and everyone else is an idiot. I never had that because I started off, maybe if I didn't start by sharing athletes, I would think that. But I already started, they would come in to get supplemental work. So I would fill in holes, and then as I was able to train 100%, they make a certain amount of good game. But I noticed with Coach Brandon, he's an amazing coach. He is one of the few people that can come up to my athletes and be like, move, do this, and this. And I'm like, oh, okay, not a problem. But I have that much respect for him. And it's not to say that these other coaches are good, or I'm not good. I'm adequate. Most coaches suck. And that's just the truth. So it's like, I got $10, they have $1. We're both broke. You know what I mean? So when they come and say, I take my hat off, and I really think I have a lot of respect for them as a coach. I'm not being micromanaged. And I just think it's cool that I am allowed to mess things up or do well without somebody, like getting in the way. We all help each other, and so that, and there's no backbiting. If you say anything about him when I'm around, then I'm not going to really let that ride. That's just a rarity, in this sport. Because it is an individual sport, and it is very nuanced with how each coach approaches their training. But we're like many times we'll have the same things to say. We're in the same book a lot of times on the same page, sometimes in different chapters or whatever, but we're in the same book. And, I get a chance to learn a lot from each guy. They may not know, but I'm watching.
We're all watching.
And it really is, and it's for the kids. It's not for me. You know what I mean? Ooh, Coach John. It ain't Coach John. It's the athlete. If they run fast, it's on them. If they run slow, it's on me. But you got to give me a chance to mess it up. And that's another story. That's another story.
Well, I just always found that when you surround yourself by other good coaches, it makes the overall program better.
Well, confident and not insecure.
Yes.
A lot of sprint coaches are insecure.
That probably reflects on the athletes.
Yes,
too,
we are a threat. And it doesn't have to be that way because there's enough athletes for everyone. You know what I mean? There's enough athletes. And if you develop them, you'd be surprised at how fast slow people actually are. And that's one of the reasons why I don't turn anybody away. One, it's just not my style because I am inclusive. I want to help as many people as I can. Not, you don't run this time, I can't deal with you. And that's cool. That's how you want to do it. That's not how I want to do it. Because you never know. You could be changing somebody's life.
Yeah.
If I'd have said no to Brittany, a bunch of these athletes, you know what I mean? And they may not have gotten a scholarship, you know what I mean? Or they may not have had a place to come where they feel good about themselves.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And so then I hire them. They come back and I use them as coaches. That way I got to train anybody to coach.
Yeah.
Because you can't train how you coach.
Right.
I don't believe that.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so.
Everyone has a different eye.
Exactly.
Everyone has
And some of them, their eyes and ears are better than mine.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm fine with that. You know, hey, look, help me. I need it. You know.
Were there any coaches when you guys were growing up that really helped you, like even you use some techniques or methods now?
Absolutely.
I have a ton.
Absolutely.
I have a few guys.
Yeah.
This show about you, but
It's us.
so my favorite coach is Gary's dad, Coach Kabline, was the very first. Well, my high school coach, Herman Franklin, he got me involved with track. He pretty much started me running track my senior year of high school. And then that got me to my next venture in college, where Jerry Kabline, which my business partner Gary Kabline's dad, have took me from a walk-on athlete to one of the top freshmen in the country. So I think I was the fourth fastest freshman in the country. I was ranked number 7 U20s. And I learned a ton from him about track and field and about how to run. And then when I transferred from Long Beach State to UCLA, I was coached by the legendary John Smith. And so John is a super meticulous about how he coaches. And so I picked up a lot from him about how to coach mechanics and how to better develop athletes from what I learned from Jerry Kabline. Now going to my youth, I played basketball. There was a gentleman, my youth basketball coach for the Candy Bulls, Tiny Planoy. Tiny was, how can I say it? Because this dude was intense 1,000% of the time. So the grit that I got from being a coach now came from Tiny. Tiny's all grit, and that's pretty much it. That's for me. What about you, man?
Man, okay, I've had some very good coaches, and I've had some coaches that I think were not very good.
Right.
But I've learned a lot from all of them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And, I my first personal coach was a guy making rest in peace, Blackman Eham. And so I was his first athlete. Over time, he developed many of the fastest athletes, I think. When he's in California, and some world champions and all that kind of stuff. We did some really crazy stuff, and I ran for LSU. And we did like a lot of 300. But what I noticed, I have this story. The jumpers were some of the fastest on the team. And the jumpers coach, the throws coach, Dan Fast. If you know track and field, then you know who this man is. And so I had watched them and how meticulous he was, as you were talking. And so that's when I started learning that it wasn't just running around the track. There was something to it. I would look at those athletes. I'm like, how come I don't look like that? And there was a skill that I just didn't understand. And that's I ended up spending a lot of time. I came back, spent a lot of time in Toronto, learning up there, and then coming down here and working with that group from Toronto, and then my former training partner, hand coach at the same time, Daryl Henson, who's also very meticulous. So I learned about speed from them.
Yeah.
And then I've always been interested in biomechanics since I was a little kid. So it's kind of like I was an old school power and break dancer. So you had to have a certain amount of coordination and everything.
Okay.
But I also remember when I would watch I was never into football, but I would like to watch football, and they'd have those old school shows where they would show everybody moving in slow motion, and I would watch how they moved in slow motion because I was always looking at how movement, you know what I mean? And in fact, when I played my G.I. Joe, I didn't like to play with anybody else. And a big one, you would fight, and the moves would be very meticulous with that. And so even just when I was watching people walk, I would watch from behind to see how the foot lands, what feet landed, and how they move. And I still do that. And it's just something that I've always been aware of. I just didn't know where it was going to be placed. And apparently it's been placed here on the track. So it's kind of like, there's a right way to strike and a wrong way to strike. But there's really one right way of how do you get an athlete to get there. And it's our job as coaches to figure that out. And yelling high knees is not going to do it. You have to teach them how to do the proper drills, like you do, how to land on the right part of the foot, getting them off the toes and all these things, which is antithetical to what a lot of these other coaches do. Spur on the toes, and then yell, get your knees up. But you can't do that. And so we take a lot of time. We take a lot of time to teach them that. And I guess, I don't know if that's a actual story of how I got into it.
That's fine, girl. We're talking about coaches. We're talking about your favorite coaches.
Oh, my favorite coach.
I know, really, it's just
I probably have adult ADHD or whatever.
Oh, I got it too.
Oh, yeah. And that's one of the reasons why I don't just another side note to that. That's why I can't we both I'm doing some of the fastest 400-meter athletes in the world, especially in the youth side in it. But we don't run 400. She doesn't run 400. I don't have the attention span unless it's a race. So I break stuff up. You know what I mean? Because stop, go again, because I'm going to be like squirrel. I just can't. But some of my favorite coaches, of course, definitely Dan Fab, Charlie Francis. I gotta say Black and him because that was my dude, even though we fell out on and off all the time. Love-hate relationship. But he was a good guy, and especially from somebody like Blackman who gave his heart and soul, crazy as he could have been. I learned it to probably give, and I like to give. You know what I mean? And it's more than just what they produce on the track; it's also what they're producing off the track. And so those whole things, I think the teaching of sprinting and the mentorship that goes along with it. So those are like three of my favorite coaches. John Smith, most definitely.
Yeah.
Just watching him train Maurice Green, he's the one that you could actually see the freaking drive phase and all the phase of her.
Right.
Every time he ran the same choreographed dance, and I used to just watch videos of that all the time. And then like little snippets of John Smith when they would have like track meets. I would be listening to what he was saying, and it would be real quick, but there were jewels that were being dropped, and he probably didn't know he was telling somebody like me who would eventually go on to try to coach. Never be on that level. That's not even my goal. But those are some of my favorite. And so, even some of the smaller coaches, you're one of my favorite coaches. And that's not just because it's him. And because I see what they do and I see the work they put in. And I see the results. And, if it's moving fast, if it comes in as nothing, it ends up being something, you're doing something. And so you have to give these coaches that respect. And so I want that answer the question.
Yeah, that works. That works.
All right.
That works.
Yeah, how do you guys want to be remembered as a coach?
That's a loaded question. That is a loaded.
Somebody who was altruistic, I'm not a hood for my own ego. Like I said, don't get me wrong. I want you to win.
Right.
But I want athletes to have had a good experience in a positive place, and a good memory, win, lose, or draw. You know what I mean? And know that there was somebody that cared. Each and every one of them know, from slow to fast, that I care about. Anybody who says that I don't, they're lying. And if I don't care, then you're not training with me. But why would you train with me if I don't care? I think, I don't know. Like somebody who helps.
Yeah.
Makes you faster. My Instagram handle is the greatness maker. That's a joke. That's another story. You know what I mean?
Oh, well, it's a story on that.
Okay. So I didn't know anything about Instagram. There was an athlete who ran for Claremont High. She ended up she ran for Stanford, into a former record holder for 100-meter hurdles. She was Coach Holmes, who was my partner at AOS, and a hurdle coach. She was his athlete. I used to work with her son when she'd come home on speed development. So we're in the weight room area at AOS. And she was I was trying to think of a name to call myself, Coach John, Coach G. I already had a Coach G, it ended up being Coach John, but my handle, she was doing this ab exercise called the greatness maker.
That's it.
I was wondering all the time.
That's where it came from. I was like, what's that? The greatness maker.
I thought it was just great advertising.
Oh, yeah, no. So when people say, oh, you're the greatness maker, I'm like, no, it's tongue in cheek. It's not like I think, ooh, I'm all that. You may think I'm all that, but it's like, that's where it comes from.
Yeah. That's a good name.
It is. I mean, it's an exercise. I don't even remember what the exercise was, but it was called the greatness maker.
What is the funniest excuse you've heard for missing a meet or a practice?
Oh, God.
Okay, we get a ton of them.
Oh.
Yeah, I've always wanted to know.
The craziest thing that I've heard for missing a meet or practice. Oh, man. Dentist appointments, doctor's appointments. I get those. My mom didn't feel like taking me today.
I don't have a ride. My stomach hurts. I mean, I don't know. There's always something. I can't think of one in particular.
That's a good question.
That's a really good question. I wish I had the time to think about it because I can't. They're all funny to me.
I've got a lot.
Yeah.
We may have to revisit this one.
Because I want to know. Not a problem. All right. Well, thanks, Coach. Thanks for joining us.
I appreciate it.
Of course.
Thanks for Mark. I thought you were.
Well, I'm Coach Brandon.
I'm Coach John.
Kayla.
And this is The Run.
This is.
See you next time.